Hi everyone. Welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley, and this is a show where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're diving back into our series dedicated to deconstructing Americanized Chinese cuisine with a shot at the Kung Pao Brussels Sprouts from PF Chang's. Now, for those who are new to this channel, in this series we have been deconstructing iconically Americanized dishes from Chinese cuisine and then seeing what it might look like if we were to cook the dish through the lens of more traditional Chinese wok cooking. And now I feel like this doesn't need to be said, but in case there was any doubt, Brussels sprouts are not a part of Chinese cuisine at all. They come from European cuisine, meaning that this is 100% an invention of Americanized Chinese cuisine, and likely more specifically, straight up just a creation of PF Chang's. This of course makes this dish even more interesting for me to investigate because, well, what the hell is this thing? The PF Chang's description to this dish features a wok-charred Brussels sprout, peanuts, chili pods, and what they call a Kung Pao sauce, all of which are alluding to the ingredients that you might more commonly see in a Kung Pao chicken. This of course means that the main challenge that we'll be facing today is how are we going to navigate the substitution of Brussels sprouts in lieu of chicken thigh, and more specifically, how are they going to cook differently when wok-charred. Then finally, rounding this all out, we'll be borrowing some inspiration from some of our earlier Kung Pao chicken recipes to come up with a bright and savory Kung Pao sauce to pair with our Brussels sprouts, leaning pretty heavily on the use of chili crisp, rice vinegar, and shaoxing wine. Okay, so let's get into it. When I feel cold, you warm me, and when I feel I can't go on, you come and hold me. It's you and me forever. Okay, so diving right in, we're starting off today, as with most of our stir fries, with the aromatic veggies of our sauté. This is going to be 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, followed by 1 inch or about 1 tablespoon of finely minced ginger. We'll be adding these fairly late in our stir fry today to accommodate our wok char, which again would be pretty similar to what you might see done in a Kung Pao chicken as well. Then next up here are our Brussels sprouts. Now, as with any dish working with a Brussels sprout, remember that these things are essentially tiny mini cabbages, which tells us 2 very important details today. The first being that the bitterest and worst tasting part of the sprout is its root end, so we don't want this to stay on because it's going to taste acrid no matter how much sauce that you cover it in. But the second equally important detail that we want to also remember is that while you may be tempted to lob off the entire root end, what we actually want to do is just remove the smallest bit of the root that we can manage, because if you chop off too much of the root, there won't be anything left to hold the Brussels sprout together anymore, and it'll just sort of fall apart in the wok fry, which is also not good. So we're splitting the difference here with half a pound or 8 ounces of Brussels sprouts, then setting these aside while we get to work on our Kung Pao sauce next. Alright, so those following along with this series will know that we have actually done several different versions of a Kung Pao chicken on this channel before, so we've got plenty of inspiration to draw from already. For our Kung Pao Brussels sprouts today, however, I actually wanted to lean a little bit harder into the brighter, lighter, and more acidic elements, rather than the richer and more umami-forward qualities that we often feature in stir-fries. I think that this is going to work really nicely with those thin leaves of our Brussels sprouts, which are going to hold onto a lot of sauce in each bite once they're fried up, so we don't want that sauce to be too rich. So up first here is 4 tablespoons of soy sauce to start, plus a single tablespoon of dark soy sauce and 2 tablespoons of hoisin sauce for a bit of sweetness and sugar. Then next, as promised, here's our acids coming in. This is 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar and a single tablespoon of shaoxing wine for those nice bright acidic qualities. Finally, rounding this all out is going to be 2 tablespoons of chili crisp oil for some gentle and pervasive heat. Then lastly, in a separate bowl is going to be 2 tablespoons of cornstarch dissolved in water for our cornstarch slurry to thicken things up later on, and we're heading over to the stove. Over on the stove, I've got my wok heating up as hot as possible. Then I'm adding about a half cup of peanut oil for our wok char. Now, if this seems like a lot of oil, remember that if we were working with chicken thigh, as in a Kung Pao chicken, there would be some nice fat rendered off from that chicken thigh, which would then contribute wonderfully to our sear and wok hay. Obviously, for our Brussels sprouts though, we're not going to have the benefit of that extra fat, so the addition of that extra oil is going to be important to make sure that we don't get any burning with these sprouts today. I'm layering these flat across the surface of my wok and letting sear for 2.5 minutes undisturbed before tossing and sauteing for an additional 2 minutes until tender. Then next, we're employing some batch cooking here to account for the lower temperatures of my home range. I'm removing my Brussels sprouts and then adding in some raw peanuts and dried Tianjin peppers for a quick 2-minute dry toast. This is gonna open up the aromatics of those chili pods nicely and also give us a bit of bite to those peanuts as well. Then next, we're removing, reheating, adding 2 more tablespoons of peanut oil and giving 1 more long yao for our third and final batch cook, which at this point is essentially just our aromatics. So here's my garlic and ginger going in for about 15 seconds until nice and fragrant. Then finally, we're adding everything back to our wok now that everything has been flash cooked on high heat. Here's my Brussels sprouts, peanuts, and chili pods going in, followed by my sauce element plus about a 1/4 cup of water. I'm giving this all 1 more toss to combine, then adding in my cornstarch slurry to thicken that sauce up, and we're ready to eat. Okay, so first off, I want to take a moment and officially debunk the myth that Brussels sprouts are the gross bitter vegetables that we were all somehow collectively forced to eat as children, which is absolutely false. The real truth is that you've probably just been eating really poorly prepared Brussels sprouts this entire time, which is absolutely very common. When done properly though, what you should have here is a smoky, toothsome sprout with a nice crisp and bright flavor that most certainly is not bitter or acrid tasting. But keep in mind though that we are also walking a very fine line with the root of that Brussels sprout here. Remove too much of that root and you've got yourself some shredded Brussels sprouts for dinner, and remove too little of it and we're back to that bitter, acrid tasting sprout again. When done properly though, I actually think that the Brussels sprout lends itself really nicely to a wok cook like this, despite being culturally way out of place. Their dense and durable nature pairs nicely with the intense high heat of a wok fry, which can be a little bit tricky with more delicate vegetables. To pair with this, I also think the brighter and more acidic Kung Pao sauce that we went with here adds a nice dimension to our sauté that complements but doesn't overpower our Brussels sprouts, which is often the line that we walk with stir fries like this. Then finally, our chili pods and chili crisp oil add a nice gentle heat to the dish that rounds everything out nicely as well. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you give this one a shot. For those who are new to the channel, this one is part of a larger series that we've been doing that's dedicated to reproducing classic Chinese American dishes, including a whole bunch of other stuff that comes from the PF Chang's menu. So definitely check out that series next if you haven't yet, because there's a lot of these. For the Bay Area locals, the Wu Can Cook Fried Rice Pop-Up is back at Novel Brewing in Oakland tonight, so come by and say hi if you can. More about that at wucancook.com/eats. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, be nice interneters, and I'll see you soon. Bye.